What's going on, people? It's Hajimoto, and today I'm going to teach you how to install the strip Stak Pak in your Umarex Origin 22 caliber. Hey guys, I just want to make sure before we get started that you fully understand that what we're going to do is be modifying this rifle. There's a couple of points in this installation where you won't need to drill the holes in the shroud, for instance. Everything else is non-destructive. If you want to ventilate the shroud, that'll be the only thing that's going to cause damage to it. So if you wanted to, you could do the installation, take the shroud off, do the installation of the stripper, put the baffle stack in, and it's no damage to your rifle whatsoever. But if you want to take advantage of this giant chamber here and being able to force the air down it and have it vent at the bottom, then that's where the destructive stuff comes in, where you're going to be drilling a couple of holes. So make sure you understand what you're about to get into, because there's no going back. Once you drill a hole, it's forever.
The items required to do this install is obviously a strip Stak Pak, melamine foam or Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. This happens to be a generic version. Melamine foam is what it's called. We're going to be using that as a diffuser. Some masking tape, a good quality set of Allen wrenches in metric, a 3/64 drill bit, a piece of tube steel that you can use to bore an 11mm hole through our diffuser, a Sharpie marker, a pointy awl or something to line up holes, and a measuring device. I'm going to use digital calipers, but you could use a ruler or anything that's going to allow you to measure between 10mm and 14mm.
Okay guys, a little explanation of what's going on here. On the Origin, there is a shroud that goes around the barrel. That shroud is nothing more than a hollow tube to help gather air and noise and keep it trapped in that chamber so the report isn't as loud. On this particular mod that we're going to be doing, we're going to be putting an air stripper at the end of the barrel muzzle and some baffles here to fill in this void down here, because right now it's hollow. There's nothing at all down at the end. So what we're going to need to do is take a scope off if you have one installed. We need to get to just that naked top of the rifle, and then we'll go to the next step. So if you have a scope on, take that off, and when I come back, mine will be off and we'll get started. Because of the way that this thing's arranged, I'm going to be turning the rifle around because the screw that's most important is going to be on your side, so I want to make sure that the rifle is on that side. Now we've got the Optic off the rifle. I've got it ready to be disassembled so that we can go ahead and get this thing started. What we're going to be doing is taking the shroud off around that barrel so that we can service it, put our air strippers and stuff on, and we're going to ventilate this. Remember guys, if you don't want to do the ventilation part, just ignore the drilling of the holes in the shroud, but everything else is non-destructive. The chamber will just act as a baffle. It'll just compress and there won't be any slow release of the air. It'll just build up pressure. So let's get started here. We're going to need a 2mm and a 2.5mm. At the front of the barrel band, there is a 2.5mm Allen wrench that's going to be on the right side. You want to put a ball end in it, or if you've got a good Allen wrench, just put that in, and we're going to loosen the screw. You don't have to take it out, just want to loosen it. Okay, now that that's loose, we want to look on the end over here at the shroud. I'm going to show you a close-up of that screw that we're talking about here. What I'm going to do for the camera is I'm going to aim it up so the camera above can see this screw. Now that we have this pointed up at the camera from above, we should be able to see that screw down inside there. I'm going to show a close-up of that screw just so you know exactly which one we're talking about. What we want to do is remove that screw. Completely take it out. Once the screw is out, put it off to the side because we're going to need it. And remember, now we've got our barrel band loose and our shroud loose in the back. We're in a position now where we can start to pull the shroud off. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we know exactly where we are. In other words, what's the top and what's the bottom. We know that the hole over here in the back is on the left-hand side. So what I like to do is take a black Sharpie marker, because it's almost invisible, put the rifle on its side, use the stock as your guide, and simply just make a little mark about 2 inches long so that we know the left side. Now we're going to do the same thing on the right side with the marker. What that's going to help us do is when we get this shroud off and we're trying to locate for our breather holes on the bottom, we've got a good idea where the direct bottom is, because we don't want the vents at the top because we don't want dirt and stuff getting inside. We don't want the dust blowing out in our face. We want it to blow down. Okay, at this point, barrel band's loose. We've marked our shroud. We've got that fastener out. We're going to take the barrel band, take the shroud for itself, take that shroud, hold the gun sturdy, and we're going to just turn back and forth. If you watch right here, that plug stays still, and we're going to just take the shroud right off the barrel. Okay, now we've got our barrel band off. Our barrel shroud is off. What I want to do is draw your attention to the features on this barrel. The features that it has, if you notice, down here is a concentric device. This is made to keep the barrel center to the shroud. At the end, if you notice, there's nothing on the muzzle as a stripper to force the air back. When you look at this piece, it is ventilated. It has holes going through it. Where earlier versions of rifles like this, it was based on this, that was a solid hunk of rubber. At least now it's ventilated so that it uses this cavity. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, why don't we go ahead and get our diffuser made using our shroud, and then we're going to go ahead and make our holes for ventilation as well. Okay, solely using the above camera, I have my melamine, which is closed cell foam, and I have my shroud, which we know that the end, this is the end that goes towards the breech of the rifle. We're going to use that end to do what we need to be, to cut our hole here. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. We're going to take this and we're simply going to use the shroud turning back and forth as we push in the melamine for it to cut a plug out of this melamine foam. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now it's going to be difficult for you to see because it's going to be straight at the camera, but I'll try to put it on a slight angle. Okay, so now using the shroud, I just cut a plug of this foam. So I've got a plug of foam. The shape doesn't have to be perfect because when it goes in, it's going to compress and it's going to fit inside. Okay, so now we have our plug. We're going to go ahead and make a hole through the center of this so we can slide down the barrel. And what we're going to do is take that 11mm piece of tubing, Sharpie marker, whatever you want to use, that's going to allow you to bore a hole through the center of the melamine foam. And the way that I do it is I center it up in the center of the foam itself, and I just get things started. And then I just plunge it through as straight as I possibly can, all the way through, like that. So that we have a hole going right through the center, which will then go down our barrel. Might as well go ahead and ventilate our shroud now that we have it off and in our hands. So on the end, remember the end with the hole on the side, we mark the tube on the left and the right so that we've got a good idea where bottom is on this, and it's one little thin area that resides right in this area here. So if we look at the front of the barrel here, we'll see that this stop comes forward about 1 inch. We want our holes to be somewhere up here so that the air has to come through the diffuser material before it exits those holes. So what we're going to do is from the back of this device forward, we're going to measure and see what we've got for a distance. Right now, that piece is 13mm, so I'm going to have my holes, the two towards the rear, be at exactly 19mm. So 19mm from the end of this pipe forward is where we're going to want the two holes, and then we'll put a third hole towards the front. So I'll show you how I do that with tape. I rip it so that I end up with a 1 inch strip like this, and I find those two magic marker stripes. One here. I've got one here and one there. So I center this right in between those marks. Now the tough part is you can't slide this thing through with the tape, because when it tries to go through the barrel band, it'll peel the tape off. So you have to do it this way, unfortunately. So now what I'm going to do is transcribe the 19 that was from the end. I'm going to try transcribe that forward onto our tape, so you can see the line right there. So that's going to be where we want our holes to be, right here, like that. And what I usually do is I make a 10mm spread, so I'll set my distance for about 10. Doesn't have to be precise, but somewhere around 10 is what I do, just so that they're consistent. So we do that, and I'll tighten my stop down. And we know that between those lines, our center is going to be right around here. So what I'll do is from that line, come up 10 to here, and then a 10mm spread at the bottom. So you can see those are going to be the areas that I'm going to drill my holes. So it'll be one there, 1, 2, 3 holes. And we're going to be drilling using those 3/64, which is a very small hole. We'll get that chucked up in the drill. Like that. And what we're going to do, we'll do the 2 holes first. Making just little dents, guys, just little divots, so I know where the holes will be, because this tape is not going to want to stay stuck. So that would be the 2. Now the forward one, like that. Now when I take that tape off, we'll get a good idea of the pattern we're going to end up with, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these out, and then what you want is a piece of stone from a Dremel set, or if you have a piece of sandpaper, you can reach in there and do it. I usually chuck something up like this, and I just run it in there to clean those up so that there's no burrs inside. So let me go ahead and get these holes drilled. I'm going to go ahead and deburr the inside now using that piece of stone from the Dremel set. And all I'm going to do is run the stone on the back side of these holes. And I'm going to check it with my pinky, make sure it's good and smooth. Knock all the dust out. Okay, that looks good. And then, just so that we don't have bright silver, I'll take my Sharpie and just put it in the hole and turn, just so that it coats the inside of the aluminum black, so it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. At this point, the shroud is completely modified, it's ventilated and ready to go. We're going to go ahead and bring the gun back, and we'll start working on taking off the centering device, get our diffuser on there, and then we can start putting the air stripper on and get the rest of it done. Okay guys, now we're going to go ahead and take off the centering device so that we can get our diffuser material on and get that back on. Then we'll put on our air stripper. Then we'll go ahead and put on our barrel shroud. So we're going to need that 2mm. There's going to be an Allen key right down in the top of this centering device that you're going to want to loosen up here. Remove the screw so that it comes all the way flush to the top. That way you know it's not going to scratch the barrel when you start to take it off. Once you have that off, you'll notice there's a detent in the barrel that coincides with that set screw that we just took out, so that when it goes back on, that's where it's going to tighten up. Now that we have that off, we're going to go ahead and get our diffuser that we made, and we're going to slide that down the barrel. Careful not to destroy it. Okay, that's in place now. Now we're going to go ahead and put the centering device back on the barrel. And we're going to tighten down the 2mm screw until we feel it go back into that detent and center back up again. Okay, now if you notice, I was careful in just getting that snug. This centering device is made out of plastic. It's very easy for you to just keep torquing on that and strip it out. It's just made to keep it there. The detent keeps it in position more than the threads of the fastener do. And that's it. That's all it does, is sits like that. Now that we have this ready, we want to get our strip Stak Pak, and we want to take out all our pieces, which what we should have is 4 baffles, 1 standoff, and 1 air stripper, and a little packet of supplied silicone grease. We're going to put the air stripper on the end of the barrel, and we're going to put silicone grease around it so that when we're screwing that shroud back on, it has some lubrication as it goes down. What I like to do when I'm putting on the air stripper is I like to take it, put it at the end of the barrel, right on the end, and then I just take a screwdriver handle and I lightly tap it until it goes all the way on. That's fully seated now, and all we do is just tap it like this, and once it's fully seated, we know it's on there and we're good to go. At this point, we want to take our silicone grease and put a little bit around this O-ring. So we're going to get our finger down in there, and we're going to put some on the O-ring. As well as the beginning of the shroud. So we've got it good on our finger, good liberal amount on there, and at the beginning of our shroud, we just want to coat this heavily. Okay, so we want something like that. Just going to get a cloth here. Okay, now that we have that all set, we take our silicone shroud, our diffuser's in place. We're going to take the shroud and turning it as we put it on so that we don't break anything. We're not twisting up and down. We're trying to keep this parallel until we get across the centering device. And we're just going to turn back and forth, left and right, back and forth, like this. Now when we get close down here, we get close to our diffuser material, we just want to help it in first, like this, so that we're forward. So that when we're pushing this on, we're working it into the shroud, and once it starts to get in like this, now we can go ahead and just let it go the rest of the way on. What we're going to try to do now is line up that hole that's going to be on that left side with that hole that's in on the left. So let's go ahead and take a look from the top, and you'll see that that hole is now lined up. I got a little silicone there. You'll see that that hole is now lined up. And I use an awl just to make sure, which I am, perfectly aligned. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and tighten that screw, put it back in and tighten it, and we're going to tighten the forward screw. Okay, now that we've got that shroud all the way back, you can see that the hole is aligned here, and that's the screw we're going to put back in that we took out before. And again, guys, remember this screws into a plastic bushing, so that it doesn't require a lot of torque. You just want to get it threaded in there. Once it bottoms out, you want to stop. We're going to let you see what I'm doing here. Just snug like that. We're done. Now on the forward side is the one for the barrel band, and we're going to go ahead and tighten that one up. Okay, at this point the shroud is back on tight, our diffuser is in, the barrel band is good and tight now. We're going to go ahead and take this end cap off and put in our pieces. I'm going to move the rifle center to the camera so that you can see that. I'll be right back. Okay guys, we've got the gun centered up with the camera here so you can see what I'm doing both overhead and in front. We're going to go ahead and unscrew the plastic cap. And in the strip stack pack, we're going to take the collar first, slide that in. The first baffle, remember they point towards the rear. First baffle goes in, second, pointed in the same direction. Next one, same direction. Last one, same direction. Now we're just going to put that cap back on and we're going to tighten it down. Okay, the cap is now on tight. Now guys, remember, it may not fit all the way down tight. It's fine. Don't force it. Don't take pliers and try to force that on there. If you notice, there's not an O-ring in here. Never was from the factory. So it's not like we're looking for an airtight seal. We're just using to baffle to what the air comes through. So you don't have to crank that down. If it goes down, great. If it doesn't, don't sweat it, okay? So if there ends up being, like you can see here, 1/16 of an inch, that's okay. At this point, guys, your strip stack pack is installed and you're ready to go. That's it. If you get a double feed, make sure you don't fire it as a double feed because it could destroy your baffles and air stripper at the end. So unfortunately, if you get two in there, you're running a risk if you pull the trigger, guys. Keep that in mind. If you've got any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.